All right, it is 1:30, so we can get this session started. I want to thank everyone for attending here for virtual and in-person engagement with meaningful results. Just a few housekeeping items. Um, as Greg just put in our little chat here, in the chat box, you can see that if you're having audio issues, you can click on the direct Zoom link, and that seems to be clearing up some issues if it's not working through the Whova app. Some other things, I'll be monitoring the chat, the Q&A in the Whova app. So try and put our questions in there. There's a chat feature and there's Q&A in the Zoom links, but let's try and keep the Q&A in the Whova app, and I'll be asking those to the presenters at the end. Make sure to check out our sponsor pages. You can, when you have time, we have several sponsors. Some of them have some pretty interesting virtual booths to check out. And also, what else? Make sure to do the session eval forms at the end too. That's an important part. So I think that's my list of housekeeping items. So I'll turn it over to Joe Politek and Beth Elliott from Stantec, and Derek Lapointe and Christy Leshevsky from City of Moorhead and Downtown Moorhead Incorporated talk about engagement.
Thanks, Mike. So I see that we've hit 100 people. I am so glad to see everyone here. So Christy is with City of Moorhead. Derek is with Downtown Moorhead Inc. Joe and I are both with Stantec, and we're going to talk to you in the next 45 minutes and hopefully hear some comments from you about engagement, virtual and in person, that we did for the Downtown Moorhead Master Plan. So I'm going to kick it off to Christy and Derek to start to give you some context, and then we'll talk through some of the key points and key engagement elements of the plan and talk about lessons learned after that.
Thanks, Beth, and thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm Christy. I'm with the City of Moorhead. I'm the Community Development Director. I've been in the planning and development field for about 14 years now. And we're so happy to be talking with you today about the phenomenal public engagement that we had during our downtown plan here in Moorhead, Minnesota. Now, if you're not familiar with Moorhead, we are a community of about 44,000 people on the North Dakota-Minnesota border, and we are right next door to our sister city, Fargo, North Dakota. Our metro population is about 245,000. And the tagline in our metro is that we are north of normal. You might ask if that's because of our winters or wood chippers or the grit or tenacity of the people. We like to leave that up for interpretation. But in Fargo and Moorhead, we have two very distinct downtowns that are connected by our Red River of the North.
Thanks, Christy, and hi everyone. My name is Derek Lapointe. I'm the President and CEO of Downtown Moorhead Inc. We're a relatively new organization that was formed in 2018, and we're actually the lead on the Downtown Master Plan in partnership with the City of Moorhead, so kind of a unique arrangement. We do have an interesting kind of dynamic here in Moorhead. We are a border community of North Dakota and Minnesota. We have Fargo right across the Red River from us. We like to think of us as obviously two different cities, but almost collaborating to have one downtown. There's a lot of features and a lot of growth that Fargo has seen over the last number of years. Moorhead hasn't necessarily seen those changes in the last 20 years. The images you see on the screen, Moorhead used to be that historic, picturesque kind of downtown, and then urban renewal happens in the 70s, makes ways for that radical movement of the suburban downtown mall that now floods the majority of our contextual setting of downtown. We've had obviously a lot of painful voices in the community that are so desperately wanting that kind of fit and that visual look again back in downtown, but we know sometimes that's difficult to accomplish. So we also knew that Moorhead, being a neighbor to Fargo and all the good things that Fargo has done, we knew that we could complement them in different ways. We knew we didn't want to copy them or be the exact same, but we knew we could complement them and complement the developments in our region. You know, some more historical context to Moorhead as well is that we really have this mall. This mall is kind of the big setting in our downtown. City Hall is there. We have empty parking lots now. A lot of room for growth, I'll say, and a lot of opportunities for change. But this community is, again, very desperate for downtown to change, to revitalize, and for them to be proud of again. A little bit more of the history of kind of Downtown Moorhead Inc. and why we formed in our partnership with the City of Moorhead. Again, Downtown Moorhead Inc. was formed in 2018. It was established by the private business community, as well as the higher education institutions that we have here in Moorhead. We have our community college in M-State. We have Minnesota State University of Minnesota, as well as Concordia. So we have 3 higher education systems right here, 2 of them that are basically neighbors to our downtown. And we really felt that that connection to our colleges was important. But it was really the leadership of some of these private industries that were ready for change. They had seen the growth across the river. They were ready to see something happen here and wanted somebody in place to kind of help facilitate that. Our partnership with the City of Moorhead started about 6 months into when we established. We actually entered an agreement to do all the economic development work under contract for the City of Moorhead. So our partnership is one that obviously grew quickly, but we knew that we could leverage ourselves together to really be an advocate for the private business community and change the policies and really kind of mold the future of downtown, and particularly the whole entire city as well. So again, it's a unique arrangement that we have, but it's gained some really, really good traction to see some projects that are happening. So as we kind of hit the ground running, we actually started to see some progress right off the start. I think a lot of it really came down to, we knew we had to change economic policies. We knew we had to establish some programs up there. We established a Renaissance Zone District, a storefront rehab program. We secured sustained border city legislation that was very, very crucial to our very different tax environment states. And we also established a 505 housing goal, where we were looking to have 500 units of housing over the next 5 years. And happy to report, just within 2 years of establishing that, we have over 260 units that are currently built, and we have more projects underway. So we're starting to see the reinvestment in Moorhead through different projects, whether it was some of the few remaining projects, remaining older historical buildings that we have in downtown. And we've also seen new greenfield kind of development in some of the parking lots and some of the other areas around our downtown. But this plan became such a crucial element of it, because we knew as reinvestment was starting to happen, as we changed policies, we knew that we needed this plan to really help guide us, help guide the development community, and really be that grassroots conversation piece from the community. We needed that framework. We needed that community buy-in to help guide us to where we wanted to go for the future. You know, infrastructure is such a big piece of it as well. We've had a downtown that I'll just touch on. You see on the map here on the screen, we have Main Avenue, Center Avenue, and First Avenue North is the one to the north side of the screen there. And we have about, well, I'll just say we have 3 highways running through our downtown, is what it feels like. No on-street parking, no real urban feel to it. But we also have train tracks leading on the north and south side of our downtown, specifically south of Center Avenue and just south of First Avenue North. So a very small segment of train tracks running through. And particularly how we view vehicular but pedestrian traffic has been important. The safety aspect of it, and how people move from place to place, how they connect to downtown, how we get those students to be safely kind of interacting with some of the venues that we have now in our downtown. And one of the big projects that we definitely wanted community input on is our 11th Street underpass. There's this image on the left side of the screen there that actually takes our existing roadways of Center, First, and Main and puts us under 2 railroad tracks. But with that comes obviously major alterations to land development, as well as just the connectivity, the visual connection to our downtown and our businesses within that framework. So a lot of things happening in a short order, which we're excited about, but we're very, very happy to kick off this plan with Stantec and in partnership with the City of Moorhead to kind of facilitate some of these needs. I'll kick it back to Christy for a few more comments on infrastructure.
And as Derek had mentioned, the 2 rail lines that go through downtown Moorhead, we also have 2 state highways that intersect in downtown Moorhead. And we were actually completing a corridor study with MnDOT and our Council of Governments for these 2 state highways that a major reconstruction project is planned for 2025. So it was really important for us to make sure that the vision for the downtown plan was consistent and informed by the corridor study and vice versa. And we really wanted to try to collaborate any public engagement efforts for both of those studies so there was that consistency. And then I'll also just close out this section by noting that really the backbone, as we see it, of our downtown is our over 85 acres of riverfront parks and trails. We have some of our most notable attractions in Moorhead, like our Youngcom Center and Museum. We have river corridor trails that are some of the highest used trails in the entire FM metro area. So we really wanted to figure out how we could build off and activate these areas. And as was just mentioned, there's a number of great things happening in downtown Moorhead right now, but we also have a lot of empty buildings and underutilized parking lots. And that's really what the public wanted to see changed, and that's where Stantec came in.
Thanks, Christy. So let me first kind of preface this by saying that, you know, Christy and Derek have really given you some good background on why this project, why now. There were a lot of municipal partners and local partners doing work along the river, infrastructure priorities. We had a lot of momentum happening in downtown Fargo that people in Moorhead were seeing and really wanted to have emulate, but have it have their own authentic, unique Moorhead character. And I think that what we were also seeing was a lot of interest in people being able to go back to their downtown in Moorhead, be able to use it in a way that they remembered. They remembered those old cool buildings, but now they really see those parking lots and those streets that zoom through without any on-street parking. This is also a major arts town. And so people were starting to see a lot more public art happening in downtown. And so it was the perfect blend of opportunities happening to start the downtown plan, particularly with the leadership from Downtown Moorhead Inc. and the City of Moorhead. So we started out the plan, just like any good plan, with talking about vision, but we wanted to do it differently than it had been done in the past. There are plenty of plans that have been done for Downtown Moorhead, but they've been so visionary that they really could not be accomplished. And so I think a lot of people had some frustrations about the ability to just get things done. And so we started out our visionary process with a variety of in-person and virtual engagement. And those are the 2 big topics we're going to be talking to you about. And I know that all of you on this call, 154 of you, have been dealing with this over the last 9 months or so. How do you do engagement? And so what we want to talk to you a little bit about is how we did it in this plan and how it could apply for the short-term future or a long-term future for planning and engagement. And in our plans, and what was very important to our clients was to do both virtual and in person to capture more audiences and remove more barriers. So what you see here are a variety of the engagement methods we used. We were amazed that we did an online survey with an interactive map and got, I think, more than 700 people responding. And that's not necessarily different than what you might be able to achieve in other cities, but the City of Moorhead and DMI just had such strong networks to promote the engagement opportunities. And people were so energized in this community about the future of downtown that it just just spread like wildfire. So, you know, we had about 700 people participate virtually. We had a variety of pop-up events. You see Derek in the lower corner at Bridge Bash doing a pop-up event. We had really great in-person workshops. You see Violet in the middle because her parents came to the meeting and said, you told us on the flyer that this was family friendly, and we wanted to hold you to that promise. And so Violet and her brother were hanging out during the meeting, creating their own visions of downtown through Legos or through prioritizing using Moorhead Moolah. And so that was really something that we wanted to make sure that we really were able to reach a variety of audiences, and that we taught them along the way about how a vision can be achievable, how it can be accomplished. That was very important to us. And make sure it was tangible and realistic, which is why we came up with that Moorhead Moolah prioritization bucket exercise, so they could start to tell the mayor and the council members what they wanted to spend money on. So this was the visioning process, and what it really helped us do was solidify a vision framework that we could use as a test throughout the rest of the planning process. So I'm going to send it to Joe to talk a little bit about how we developed frameworks for this plan.
Yeah, so after we developed the high-level vision, we really wanted to get people on the ground in the specific places within downtown Moorhead so they could apply that vision and kind of help us flesh out how it applies to specific spots. So, you know, we wanted people stepping on the sidewalk and waiting for the train and just having those real experiences as they're thinking about how to apply the vision on the, to individual places within downtown. So we created what we called walk shops, you know, workshops, but while walking for 5 key locations. And we said, here's the vision that we developed in the last phase. You know, first of all, do you agree with it, or why not? And then ask specific questions about applying that vision to this spot. You know, how can this place be the center of activity, or how could this underpass be a place where you could actually feel comfortable walking, visiting local shops. So what we did was we just designed a simple clipboard type packet. It had, you know, it was the alternate to the boards that you'd have at a traditional in-person meeting. So it had some background information, you know, stuff, why we're here, what we've learned so far, and then specific questions related to applying the vision to this place we're at. So, you know, it was a simple 5-page packet. One thing we did was just staple a thin piece of cardboard behind the package just to make it easier for people to write as we're out in the cold. But let's see. So this was one way. It was middle of the winter, you know, in Moorhead is cold. It's a harsh environment. So this was one way that we could get people outside. And looking back now through, as we've been through the pandemic, this is one way that we could also get people out from behind their computers. So even though we were in a group, you know, in the photo here that might be larger than what we might be able to do right now, you could send people out into the field with these packets, or, you know, we could even translate this into an app that people could get out rather than just doing a survey and that kind of thing.
Joe, can I mention something really quickly?
Yeah.
Derek and Christy never thought we were crazy when we said, let's do walk shops in early February in Moorhead, but a lot of people did. And I would say that it is really important. I think all of us now are thinking about how we spend time outside during the winter in a safe way. And it's really important that we don't continually think of our weather as a barrier. I'm the one in the middle in that crazy hat facing away. What we really wanted to do was try to help people picture the environment that they would be in and it's not always nice, warm summer weather here. And so it was important for us that this downtown be a four-season downtown, and that these walk shocks really helped us figure out where we had winter impediments, where property owners didn't shovel, where we had piles of snow that were impeding crossings. And like Joe said, you could do this now. You could get out from behind the desk and plan scavenger hunts. You could plan walk shops in small groups. And I think have it be a really tangible engagement method when we have safety concerns and when we're beyond those safety concerns. Is this back at me, Joe?
Back to you.
Great. So where we ended up, so the vision ended up helping us figure out where the priority areas were for us to do those walk shops. You know, the underpass that Derek and Christy talked about was a big piece of that. The mall, the Moorhead Center Mall, was a big piece. And that's when we started to get to developing design criteria from the feedback that we got during those walk shops. So they helped us create the frameworks for downtown, the design frameworks, the transportation frameworks, land use, and so much of it was happening on the ground. We also had a lot of workshops inside where we translated the material from the walk shops into workshops that we could do inside the mall. And so that worked out really well. And so I'm going to mention 3 of the strategies that came out of the plan and all of the engagement feedback. So this is essentially where the mall is in downtown. The river curves on the north of it and to the west of it. And then Fargo's on the west side of the river. The mall is the most important piece, the most important site in downtown Moorhead. It is really complicated. I know a lot of you have dying malls in your towns and are trying to figure out ways to either reactivate them or redevelop them. Moorhead is dealing with the same thing. However, there's more complications here than in an average mall. The city owns a variety of pieces of the mall area. What I was most fascinated by is when you walk through the corridors inside the mall, that's actually considered city right-of-way. The parking lots in many ways are owned by the city, but then this mall is a condo association. So each individual tenant is a condo owner. So having a developer come in and purchase components of the mall is that much more complicated. And so what we started to look at is a 3-phased approach for developing this mall site. It is going to be hard, and we don't want to unnecessarily concern the tenants before we have to. So this first phase is really focused on public improvements. I have about 20 years of planning experience. I truly believe every time you want to make grand changes, particularly in a downtown environment, you have to get the public realm right first and create a there for developers and investors to start to see where they could fit in. So we really wanted to focus on Center Avenue, creating some initial development pads around the mall and service parking lots, and make a better green space in front of the mall. The second phase builds on that and builds another east-west right-of-way through the mall site. So this phase demolishes the initial piece of the mall facing Center Avenue. It keeps the rest of the mall site, the mall in the back, but it creates another right-of-way. And what this did was it created more development pads. It created the opportunity to create a really much grander civic plaza in downtown. And then that new east-west route created more facades for development that we can put further into the site because it's such a deep site. And then finally, for the third phase, we really want, this is full redevelopment. This is maybe you keep the City Hall tower that's actually attached to the mall. Maybe you keep the parking garage for the mall because that's building new parking is such an investment that we may not need in the future. But this is really creating more of a grid, creating more public space. We wanted to be able to put public buildings around that civic center to activate it. The library is a great opportunity for that. Keeping the City Hall tower or something similar in there. Maybe a science museum, which is one of the things that have been talked about, could really activate this daytime, nighttime, weekends. And so this is really the full build out of a really amazing public realm experience, getting that compact critical mass of residential development that will drive more commercial activity here, and having that all be a front stage for connections to the river. So this is one of our major strategies. I think this is our most important strategy in downtown, but let's go to a couple more quickly, Joe. The underpass, all my colleagues talked about this. We thought this was a really important piece to engage on, and frankly, I will say that my strategy for engagement is try to be as transparent as possible on particularly decisions that are being made at the public level, and really bringing a lot of the particularly sometimes engineering discussions out into the forefront. But we also had to really make sure that the engineers for the city were comfortable with the type of engagement we were doing on the 11th Street underpass. So we actually, through this plan, did the first engagement that had been done broadly. But Derek also had been dealing with, going property owner to property owner, talking about how they might be impacted by this, what acquisitions were going to be necessary, what might not be necessary. And this is all to help potentially get bonding in the session that is started today in Minnesota, and may include a bonding bill, but is still so early in the process. So how do you balance these concerns and the opportunities? And so you can see on the left-hand side, Joe, can you actually click on the image of you doing engagement over there? So Joe actually built a little model for us to bring out to our engagement process. And he used a virtual engagement goggles to help people see what this might look like. What is a trench? What happens with 11th Street? What happens to those important streets of Center Avenue and Main Avenue as they bisect this trench? What happens to where do people walk? And so it was really important for people to actually see themselves walking through here. And we got a lot of great feedback, particularly about the fact that we could use art in a major way to make this underpass a feature of downtown rather than a detriment. More lighting under bridges, really cool material, and murals on these walls. So that was a really important part of this conversation, was to talk about the hard things. Joe, can we go to the final one? A final strategy, and I'm not going to talk extensively about this because I know we want to get onto lessons learned and questions from you, but there was some informal parking going on in downtown, but our major roads of Main Avenue and Center Avenue, as Christy mentioned, felt like total thoroughfares. They did not feel like downtown streets. They felt like suburban streets. And Joe's showing you the orange sections are where we want to add on-street parking. All the blue is actually where we found informal on-street parking, and it looks like a lot, but when we brought this up with Christy and Derek and their colleagues, none of us really thought that that amount of parking was actually happening. And so a big part of parking management is formalizing where people can park and where they can't. And there's tons of surface parking, and a lot of what we heard from the public is that they just don't know where they belong. And so a big strategy for this downtown plan, like many downtown plans, is to formalize where parking is available, create opportunities for shared parking agreements, do better wayfinding, make sure your zoning code isn't standing in the way. And so those are the little things that we can do in this downtown that will make a big difference to visitors and residents. And so those were the three big strategies. Well, we had a lot of design related strategies. Those were the big ones, particularly that came out of the engagement process. So I'm going to turn it back over to Christy and Derek to talk about momentum and lessons learned.
So I would say that we had really good momentum going into the downtown plan. And I think throughout the process and the engagement, now that we're coming out of the plan and the plan is being developed and finalized, we have even stronger momentum. We have a lot of owners and developers that are interested in investing in our downtown, a lot of projects that are in the key. We did strategic planning with our city council and made a real focus on partnerships and working with different partners, such as Riverkeepers, Audubon Dakota, our local Rotary, but really also working on those development collaborations, of which Downtown Moorhead Inc. has been really critical in fostering.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. And yeah, it's exciting. We've had some momentum, obviously beforehand, but even during this process, since the plan announced, we started doing some of our initial engagement, which we had tremendous success with individuals participating. We've since entered a development agreement with a developer looking at the mall and trying to reimagine that space. We've also really kind of taken on key issues and just went at them head on. We're not afraid to go in there and have these difficult conversations with folks. I think so many times we get in our comfort zone and we're afraid to kind of see what those answers will be or how people will respond to us. But for us, we've really gone in with that approach of, we have to talk about these issues. We have to know how the public perceives them, how our businesses interact with them, how the public interacts with them, and how we can better ourselves. The unique relationship that Downtown Moorhead Inc. has with the city is that we can kind of come in there and be that voice for the public and private sector as well. We can mold policies, we can mold programs. We're not afraid to try things. This plan certainly, I think, brought out the best in the public of Moorhead. It also brought out the best of folks working within City Hall, our elected leaders, who were really able to go to the people rather than just wait for folks to come to City Hall and hear from them about different complaints. So I'm excited about these relationships that we've built. I'm excited about the collaboration that's to come, because this project is a big one. It's a big undertaking that obviously is not without its challenges, and certainly during this COVID effect has brought up even further challenges. But you know, things that we're looking at in that collaboration and the communication that we have with our community is looking at our capital improvement list. What projects are upcoming for next summer? We know that our Center Avenue project that we've spoken on too, of trying to condense that into a 3-lane road section. We knew that that was such a big priority for our community, but we also knew that next summer is going to be a very, very big year for our businesses, specifically the restaurants up and down that corridor, some of the retailers that are up and down that corridor. And we had conversations with folks. We discussed it at great length to say, you know what, maybe next year isn't the best time to do these things. Maybe we give our businesses a break, let them recover, see what else they need from a support standpoint to really make it an effective year for them and not drive them with other projects that could really impact them in a challenging time. So it's a unique dynamic. I think the best part about this process is that we're driven to be successful. We have the community that's still behind us, still engaging with us in whether it's email dialogues or phone call or virtual settings. We also know that we're creating an evolving and flexible downtown for our future. We don't know what the future holds for us, but we know that the input that we receive, the built environment that we have control over, can really be flexible and create something that not only our public is impressed with and want to be a part of, but the development community comes to the table and ultimately puts that investment in the ground that really changes the look and the feel of our downtown. So I'll pass it back to you, Beth.
Thank you, Derek. Let's see. So, Mike, have you been checking out the chat boxes in the variety of places? Do we have any questions yet?
So far, we've only had one question, so I encourage people to submit more. But you want to jump into questions right now?
Well, so let me just say thank you to everybody. I know this is it can be a challenging way to learn about projects, and I think we've all gotten pretty used to it. What we're showing you, what we actually did our presentation with was through StoryMap, ArcGIS StoryMap, and that was a big part of our project, and I think it's a big part of what a lot of you are doing lately. We are going to be starting the Moorhead Comprehensive Plan any day with Christy and Derek as a separate project, and story maps and virtual engagement are going to be a huge part of that, and we're already talking about how we do our first rounds of engagement. So I think we're all getting more and more creative, and I think that we would love to learn from everyone else too about what we're doing, what you're doing.
All right. Well, this is a question from Tommy O'Donnell. How can you ensure accessibility in various engagement techniques? For example, how accessible were the walk shops for physically disabled participants?
Yeah. So that was a big part of what we were thinking about. And it's also another reason why you plan a variety of engagement methods. What we do is we have what we call an engagement push, which is a time when we do a variety of engagement methods. So someone with physical accessibility challenges could have done the story map and received the same information and could provide input in the same way as a workshop. The workshops were challenging. And I think part of one of the reasons for the workshops was to start to identify a lot of those physical accessibility issues. We noticed, I'm a very able-bodied person, and I had a very hard time walking through some parts of downtown because the sidewalks were really challenging with snow and ice. And so I think what the workshops did in many ways was actually highlight some of those accessibility issues where we had lights that were too fast to cross. But then also, besides, people spending time outside in the cold, you could also have gotten the same content and feedback loops inside the mall where it was nice and warm. So we really were thinking about a variety of methods and opportunities and barriers that we could remove in that engagement process.
Yeah, I think that's a good piece, Beth, and I'll never forget too, our president of Concordia College had just recently slipped on ice at a event on campus, broke his ankle. He was on a big walking boot and had his cane with spikes on it, trying to treacher the ice on the sidewalks. But I think that was the big thing, is we were really trying to, where are our flaws? Identify the flaws, get out to those areas where we knew we had to have improvements, get that honest feedback. But as Beth mentioned, we always tried to have a starting place that was accessible. So if people didn't feel comfortable, they were still able to give the input. We usually reconvened in that same area to kind of get it so you could drive around, you could do different things to still participate in some fashion.
I noticed you had reflective vests and other PPE as well.
We did. We did. Yeah, that's a big strong element of Stantec's model, as well as the city, and so yeah, that was an important point for us.
These two questions are kind of related. How did you publicize the online engagement tools? And then kind of related, but a little bit different, were you able to engage diverse segments of the population? Did you do anything different to get improved reach from certain groups?
Yeah, so maybe I'll turn that to Derek and Christy for to start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, from Downtown Moorhead Inc's perspective, we were built on the foundation of the public, of the private businesses, of the higher education institutions. We knew that our biggest asset was to bring people together from all backgrounds. So we went to our New American institutions. We went to businesses straight that we knew that didn't necessarily come to city-led functions in the past. That's why I think we put so much onus on participating in the Bridge Bash event, where we knew college kids were going to go to just maybe have a good time, but we could also interact with them and get dialogue that we traditionally wouldn't get. We also have a historic Dairy Queen here in downtown Moorhead, which is one of the first in the country, kind of originated the Dilly Bar. And we just popped up one day and we got families. We got that honest conversation with families. So we tried to, one, use the existence of our trust that we built over the first couple of years of our foundation of an organization, but also reach out to those communities that really aren't engaged in a frequent manner. We also decided to, one of our original open houses was at the Yumcomp Center, which is a kind of an arts facility. We got our Parks and Recs there, kind of a unique space to get people in. But the second event, the second open house we did was right at the Moorhead Center Mall, right in the atrium space. We got people that really were in the, well, which some people thought could be controversial. We didn't know what we were going to get with some of the mall owners and everything else. But we knew if we came to that space, we could get the mall owners out of their shops, get to the conversation that was being held right in front of their doors, and just listen to the dialogue that was going on to kind of help facilitate some change. I don't know, Christy, do you have anything else to add on that?
I'll just add that, you know, we sort of have the reputation up here of being the biggest little town. And I think what that means, at least to me, is a lot of times it's just word of mouth. So you don't necessarily need to send an invitation to every single person in your community, but you have to know the people, especially in those hard to reach populations, that are going to tell 20 people, and then they're going to tell 10 people, and you just sort of get this word of mouth. So we've really tried to build up our connections with a whole variety of nonprofits and different organizations in our community so that they can help us in assisting and get the word out for these engagement opportunities.
Mike, I saw the question about green roofs. Was there any feedback regarding green roofs and stormwater management and turning all that infrastructure into amenities? You know, we didn't get a lot of feedback, I don't think, Christy and Derek, about stormwater management and green roofs. But then again, I don't think we asked a lot of specific questions about that. I know that we've had a lot more discussions about eliminating surface parking lots and using downtown sites in more sustainable ways. But you as a community do so much with flood management that this has got to be something that a lot of people are thinking about at the community.
Well, and really credit to our engineers because, you know, another thing that they say about our community is you can watch your dog run away for 3 days because it's very flat up here. So our stormwater engineers are really geniuses. And so I think they are very in tune to different methods and means to handle stormwater because we have to be, just because we have so few options. And then with the river and our flood mitigation, stormwater and water management is very important.
Any other questions, Mike?
Just one other one that kind of relates back to the walk shops. Someone was wondering if there was any benefit to doing them in different seasons. If you do it in cold weather, you might get a different perspective in a warm season. And I know when you're on a project like that, you only have a window that you're working, but
yeah, no, it is such a good question. And I think that is a huge benefit. I think it could very well be done during multiple seasons. And I know that when we do parking studies in downtowns, sometimes you want to be able to see how parking is used throughout various seasons. But honestly, it just happened that we were doing this engagement during the winter. And I think a few of us were talking and said, oh man, we're doing the most design-oriented engagement and we're going to be inside the mall the whole time. How do we do this in a way that gets people outside and gets them picturing various views in the public realm? And so it was done by necessity, Mike. And I think that a lot of people who were outside during those workshops thought, why could we have done this during the winter or during the summer? But we didn't, you know, it just happened to be when our plan hit that phase of work and we didn't want to shy away from doing outdoor engagement.
I will say too, a follow-up on that is that we are continuing to do them. Maybe in a modified sense, or maybe not the formalized way of doing it, but I know our acting city manager right now, a lot of times if we're having a meeting with the developer, we're just trying to get some context and stuff, we just say, you know what, we're not going virtual today, we're gonna go out and take a walk. We'll go grab a coffee, we're gonna go take a walk. We walk up and down the street. We go walk down to Woodlawn Point. That's about a mile to the south of us too. We interact with the space, which I think was such a unique aspect of our plan, and that now some of the participants from that walk shop are now coming back, and you see them in those areas that you probably didn't before. They weren't coming to those areas. So I've seen it, whether it's through our acting city manager, myself, our Moorhead Business Association director. A lot of times we're just getting out of our offices, getting away from our computer, and going out and interacting with the space, which I think is just so important when we're talking about physical design, when we're talking about the presence of businesses. You know, so many of these businesses right now are struggling through COVID, and the fact that you're going out, you're grabbing a coffee, maybe you're not sitting there and spending an hour there, but you're going out and seeing another store and calling out things that some of these individuals that are new to your community or new to your downtown just haven't interacted with before. And I think for us, we're always the biggest marketers. We're trying to market our community. We're trying to put ourselves out there. And it's important just to kind of get out of our box, get out of our comfort zone, and share new experiences with folks. Share them with them what you're proud of in your community. Share with them where your challenges are. A lot of times, they can bring new ideas to you that you haven't thought of, or you know, fresh kind of perspective on things that really change the outcomes for our planning purposes, but also from a development standpoint when you're talking about real projects coming to fruition.
Is that it, Mike? Are we done with our time?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you guys timed it out perfectly. That's the end of our time, but I think that's a great point to end on, that we can look at things on the plan, we can see, but it really takes getting out in the field to really understand how things will end up. So.
And Mike, can I mention, there's also a diversity and equity happy hour or snack time at 4:15 this afternoon. It just got on the schedule a couple of days ago. I'll be one of the facilitators. So if you have the opportunity to join us and have an informal conversation, I would definitely encourage you to do that.
Yep, I'll second that. And I think you're going to have breakout rooms, so it won't be just 100 people. It'll be small group discussions. So, yeah. So I want to thank you, Joe, Beth, Derek, and Christy for presenting your wonderful presentation. And thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well,
Thank you.
Thanks.